Hey, YouTube. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hey Benjamin, I can't see you yet. I'm so sorry about the technical
No
woes. I
problem.
had to change computers.
No, we're good to go, and then we're actually getting ready to broadcast now. YouTube is already listening to us, so hey, YouTube, you won't be able to see me, but the audience can see you, and when you watch the video, obviously, you'll be able to see both of us.
Right on.
All right, here we go.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, October 25th, 2016. Thanks so much for joining us. I always say it, and I always mean it. You could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you decided to spend time with us as we discuss everything and anything. So I don't take it for granted. Thanks for being here. Thanks to all of our patrons. We can't do it without you. Our bonus show will be up immediately after the show tonight. I'm excited about everything that's on the agenda, I guess you can call it. I have an interview that I'm going to do with Sarah Smarsh. She wrote a brilliant piece in The Guardian last week, and it went viral, and so I couldn't get her until this week. I mean, everybody wanted to talk to her last week. I couldn't get her until this week, but it's about how the media has failed the working class, and it dovetails into this election, obviously, and Donald Trump, and a lot of the things that we've talked about previously with regard to Donald Trump supporters, the white working class, and the erasure of, I mean, just across the board, right? I talked about the erasure of black people for the purposes of, for the purposes that I won't outline again. But in her piece, she really talks about how white progressives that are in the working class have been erased. So we'll talk with her about that. And actually, I have her already on the line. So we'll talk about that at the top of the show. We don't mind doing some rearranging. Also, the federal the Justice Department has announced that they are going to actually finally do an investigation into the death of Eric Garner after 2 years. We'll be discussing that. Colin Powell has endorsed Hillary Clinton, so that's going to be some pretty interesting fodder for conversation tonight. And there is a PPRI police poll that we have to discuss because it seems like we're living in parallel worlds, parallel universes. So we'll get to all that. But first, let me just welcome to the show Sarah Smarsh. Sarah, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, Sarah, I lost all of your audio. Hang on a second. Let's try that again. All right. Say something for me. Okay, I'm going to leave your line open so we could give you a chance for to connect that audio. And worst come to worst, we can always do a call in. Here we go. It seems like it's connecting again. All right. In the meantime, while we work out those technical difficulties, you can join the conversation, 857-600-0518. Thanks to Anoa Changa. She had a fabulous show tonight. I did my best to watch what I could, but whenever I watch Anoa, I always get sucked into it, and I'm supposed to be doing show prep. Appreciation to her for what she's doing over there. And I have filibustered enough to get some audio. Sarah, how are you tonight?
Hi Benjamin, I'm doing great and I'm happy to talk with you. Sorry for the technical woes.
Oh, no problem at all. Let's see if I can get, I don't have your video, but that's fine. I have your audio. At least we could have a conversation. Tell me a little bit about your article and what led you, I have video now, what led you to write this article, and kind of give me the backstory before we delve into some of the specifics.
Sure. Well, basically, I'm a native of the white working class that you were just talking about at the top of the show, and and I also am a professional journalist, so I'm kind of uniquely equipped maybe to be sensitive to whether the mass news media gets narratives about my home place right or not. That's not to suggest that I somehow represent everyone in the white working class. That's kind of precisely what I was writing against, the idea that that's a monolith. But at any rate, I felt like they were really kind of getting the narrative wrong.
And what specifically? So, okay, actually, some of the things that jumped out in the article for me. One, you use the context of your family, a family member who caucused for Bernie, if I'm not mistaken, voted for President Obama twice, considers herself to be a progressive, and considers herself to be completely opposed to what Donald Trump represents. But when you have the narrative of that's being woven by the media, it kind of just completely erases the fact that you actually have white working class people who are both progressive and oppose Donald Trump versus this picture of all of Donald Trump's supporters are white working class. And it sounds like you're saying something. It looks like you're saying something great there, but there it is. Here we go. Go ahead. Start over for me.
Okay. You got me. Okay. Yeah. So the family member that you were talking about, that's my grandma. She wouldn't use the term progressive about herself. I'm from a pretty a family and a kind of place that really isn't terribly politically engaged most of the year, and they're out in like working in wheat fields and in factories and not part of a real national political discourse. So she might not use that term about herself, but but progressive definitely is what she is, and she has always embodied those values. And so this election year, she's appalled by Donald Trump, and as are many members of the white working class I know. You mentioned her votes for Obama. In 2008, 42% of Kansas, I don't know how this shakes out class and race-wise, but 42% of my home state came out for Obama. And when we're so fixated on the Electoral College and the way that we cover politics, that whole group of people suddenly is invisible, even though, in my opinion, 42% ain't nothing. And so, but what I was really wanting to do with this essay is to show that, of course, there are Trump supporters among the white working class, but they're not his quote unquote base. Recent studies have shown that his supporters actually have slightly higher median incomes than the national average, slightly higher education levels than the national average, and so on. So I'm really suspicious about that narrative, and I have some ideas about why it prevails in spite of the numbers.
Right. And that's kind of what you went into in your article. So you say the faces journalists do train the cameras on, hateful ones screaming sexist vitriol next to Confederate flags, must receive coverage, but do not speak for the communities I know well. You continue to say that the media industry ignored my home for so long that it left a vacuum of understanding in which the first glimpse of an economically downtrodden white is presumed to represent the whole. Unpack that for me.
That's right. I think, and that we could say this of any group of people along any demographic marker. If you've got a faction of the American population that doesn't usually get news coverage in terms of their issues and what's going on their main streets, then I'm not necessarily suggesting there's some sort of classist mass conspiracy in the media. I think it's just if anything, it's like a kind of obliviousness on the part of wealth privileged and of course also a race privileged media. And so yeah, that dude that is wearing the horrifying t-shirt that says something bad about women, and he's waving a Confederate flag and spewing racial epithets, he's real and he needs to receive coverage, of course. But I think that there's twofold what that narrative misses. One is that there is racism and misogyny and xenophobia present in the middle and upper classes as well, and they are also giving Donald Trump lots of money and staying quiet in their socially conservative white suburbs, and they're not showing up and waving flags at rallies. But those stories should be told too. And then also the other thing that is missed, as you said, is the many people I know who are white workers who would die before they cast a ballot for Donald Trump, and a lot of them were for Sanders in the primary, actually. So they're kind of like on the other end of the populist spectrum.
hmm and so we're actually like talking in two different silos here that that you dealt with brilliantly in your article. One, you dealt with this. You actually have an entire section, poor whiteness and poor character, where they draw an equivalency, even if not directly, they indirectly draw an equivalency between character and poverty, and the less money you have or the less wealth that you have, they shine a light on the negative aspect of that community, making it seem as though if you're poor you have no character. And you said this, I love this line, you dropped the mic here. I assure you that none of us had to go to college to learn basic human decency. I love that line, absolutely. The other thing that we're dealing with is the reason, right? You're unpacking the reason this happens, and you're saying that it's not necessarily a class conspiracy as much as it is obliviousness and a certain amount of privilege. What else would you attribute it to, or would you just unpack, like, why does this happen? Why is it such a persistent theme, despite the fact that Donald Trump supporters are wealthier? You know, the median income for Donald Trump supporters is $72,000, but we lay it at the feet of the quote unquote working class.
Yeah, well, I think any group, as racial minorities and all sorts of groups in this country know well, all too well, anytime you have a group that isn't represented proportionately in newsrooms, and for that matter, whose voices just aren't heard as much in general due to all sorts of systemic imbalances, that group is going to be vulnerable to scapegoating and mischaracterization. So, I think that's one part of it. And then I think that sometimes there is some real overt judgment and contempt on the part of middle and upper class whites toward lower income whites that, as you were pointing toward from my essay, equates, let's say, lack of college degree with some sort of just ignorance about basic human decency, and that's just that's blatant classism. Now, I would say that you could also have an entirely well-meaning reporter, and I want to say that as a member of the news media, and I'm proud to be a journalist, and I think that the industry takes a lot of crap, especially at the present moment, for supposed conspiracies that don't exist. That said, I think that sometimes it's even a well-meaning reporter, if tasked with going into a space where he or she holds biases that are, have been fostered by culture and society, maybe, by no fault of the individual, then those biases are going to come out in the way that a story is reported.
Mm-hmm. So let's unpack some of the outcomes of this, right? We can't lay this completely at the feet of the media, but they own some of this problem, right? And some of the outcomes being this this mischaracterization of an entire class of people, counter to the evidence showing that Donald Trump supporters are wealthier, right? That's one. And then the other is you have this continuous theme through America that wealth equals some type of moral virtue. What are some of the other downsides to this type of trope that is constantly cast? I mean, I have a few, but I want to hear from you. Like, what do you think are some of the other effects that we see or maybe not even aware of?
Well, I would say that, if we're at a moment of, just real political peril and high stakes in this country, which, is everyone's aware of in different ways and from different angles, I think that anytime that the media kind of fixates on the most sensational story, that is not only damaging to the way that the country sees itself and can navigate political discourse together, but it's also kind of irresponsible to its role as a watchdog for democracy. So I went into the industry because I see the, reporting's virtue as like, speaking truth to power, shining light where where a story isn't being told, and so on. And if you've got a mass media that is by and large driven by profit-seeking mechanisms and business models, then that means that like the most egregious and horrifying B-roll, that being like the tape that rolls while an anchor or reporter is speaking, of say some image that represents a divide or an extremist view in our country, that's a really dangerous way to approach covering current events. I can give you an example from my home state. Kansas is unfortunately home to the very notorious Westboro Baptist Church, so-called. It's much less a church than it is a hate-mongering cult, of course. But, so Fred Phelps, their kind of patriarch, and their crew has been around for a long time. And coming up in Kansas media, I learned that the journalists, good newspaper and TV reporters in Kansas, all kind of have this unspoken pact together of like, we get that this hateful sect very skillfully wants to and will use us and manipulate us as a platform for their message. And that's it's a tough line to walk, because you also have to cover the news, and you don't want to like turn away from the horrifying extremist aspects of the country. But I think that the national media just got played so hard by Donald Trump, and some of that includes the just kind of through the roof ratings appeal of the Trump rally and all that it represents, which to my mind is an extreme minority of this country. And so now we're left with this sort of perverted view of the nation, as though those people speak for all of us, or at the very least for the white working class, and I don't think that's accurate.
The article is entitled "Dangerous Idiots: How the Liberal Media Elite Failed America's Working Class Americans." It's by Sarah Smarsh. It's in The Guardian. I've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks. Sarah, thanks so much for joining me to talk about this. You were it was hard to lock you down, but you promised you would do it, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm honored to be asked. Thanks so much, Benjamin. It was a pleasure.
Now, tell real quick, it's just kind of a tradition here. Tell everyone how they can get up with you, like your Twitter handle or whatever, however you like to get contacted.
Yeah, I would love for folks to look me up on Twitter. It's Sarah, that's SARAH _ Smarsh, SMARSH. And I also have a Facebook page that's easy to look up, where I kind of post stuff behind the scenes of the essays that I'm working on. And my website with a lot of my, if folks like this essay, this is the kind of thing I've been writing about for several years, and there's some stuff they might also enjoy at my website, sarahsmarsh.com. Thanks
again for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. I definitely recommend reading that article, the essay. It's really a brilliant take, and it's definitely worthwhile. It actually dovetails right into the other half, right? So she's addressing the issue from the liberal media drawing a picture of the white working class that creates enmity, right? It paints them all as racist. I pick up the other side, where I say the liberal media, the black liberal media, is painting this crowd as racist, and they're painting them all as, Donald Trump supporters, when in actuality, there's a very large group of white working class voters who, even though they may not identify as progressive, as Sarah mentioned, they definitely voted for Obama. They voted with Bernie Sanders, and they have something in common with African Americans, with a lot of African Americans, not all African Americans, right? Because there's no monolith. But it reminds me of the Saturday Night Live sketch of that just happened this weekend with Tom Hanks, and where it was Black Jeopardy. and they were asking questions, and it was, obviously a Saturday Night Live, so it's, you can't really draw a lot from it, but there was something to be said there where they were showing all the commonalities between like a Donald Trump supporter and African Americans, or basically like a white working class, right, voter and African Americans. And there were so many things that we had in common until we got to a particular issue. That's the particular issue of Black Lives. That's the picture. As funny as that was, and as accurate as it is for Donald Trump supporters, that's not all of the white working class. And I think what it does ultimately, I don't buy into conspiracies, but I do buy into divide and conquer. It's very easy to keep working class people divided using race. Anyway, next story, 857-600-0518. Let's talk about the divide on race with the perceptions of the police. I read this article, or I saw the data this morning on Twitter, and I'm like, we have to be living in a parallel universe. Like, there's no way these opinions of police officers actually persist at the level that this article is talking about. I mean, I'm putting this on the screen. They would have you believing that this is what American police forces are, like officer friendly, when in reality, this is what the American police force is. It's this hyper militarized police force. So anyway, just a little backdrop. So 52% of people believe police officers generally treat non-white and white Americans the same. Like, okay, let me say that again. More than half of Americans feel like, let me get accurate. More than half of Americans believe that non-white people and white people are treated the same by police officers. Just at face value, that's absurd, right? But then you put in the context of the same exact survey, the PPRI poll from 2015. In 2015, only 41% of Americans believed that was true. So in 2015, only 41% of Americans believed that blacks and whites were treated the same by police officers. During the summer and the year of 2016, one of the most turbulent years in my entire lifetime, probably in the last half century, right? I mean, everything from just name something that didn't happen between 2015 and 2016. So between 2015 and 2016, we saw an uptick of 11%. 11% more of Americans believed, because I don't know what happened. They felt like relations got better over the last year between blacks and the police. It's almost like, okay, let's start here. I'm starting in a lot of places. Number one, 52%, that's actually not absurd when you consider the breakdown of what America looks like. We consider African Americans are 12%, 13%. Hispanics are 15%. They're the largest minority at this point, and the white Americans are the majority, right? So if you take that makeup and you come out with saying, oh, it's about a 50-50 split. 50% of Americans think the police treat African Americans and people of color differently than they do minorities, white Americans. That actually is not bad, right? You would think more, right? You look at the next stat. 76% of Americans have a great deal of respect for their local police. That seems that seems right in line with the population split, right? But so it's not so troubling that 52% is the percentage of Americans who think black people are treated the same by the police as white people. It's the fact that it went up, and more people think today that white people are treated the same as black people by the police than they did in 2015. Like, what did they experience between 2015 and 2016 that made them have more confidence that police officers are not targeting, racially profiling African Americans, are not killing unarmed African Americans. Because the data, I mean, the actual happenings over the last year doesn't match that. It's almost like they looked at the Black Lives Matter movement and said, you know what? I'm going to spite you and say things are getting better for you guys, and you guys just have nothing at all to complain about. And so now 11% more of Americans. I don't know what world they're living, or maybe they're just oblivious to what's going on. I don't know. It could be they're just not paying attention and they're just saying this, but it's more likely that they see the movement. They see what's happening with Black Lives Matter. They see what's happening across the nation, and they are incensed. They are angry about that. And so, yeah, we'll screw you in this poll. So that's 76% of Americans believe or have a great deal of respect for their local police. Again, they must be seeing their police like this, but I leave them alone. You know, it's not that I don't have respect for my police. Actually, I don't have, I mean, you get respect as soon as we have an interaction. Let's interact first, and then I can tell you if I have respect for you or not. 80% of white Americans believe this in 80% of white Americans believe or have a great deal of respect for their local police, while only 67% of minorities have this great respect, a great deal of respect for the police. So you can see the breakdown there. Nearly 80% of non-white respondents disagreed that the police treat all the same. Nearly 2/3 of white Americans said police generally do so. So let's break that down. Think about that. 50% of all Americans, this is how you drill down. 50% of all Americans think, blacks and whites treated the same. 80% of non-white Americans say, nah, that's not the case. We are not treated the same. 2/3 of white Americans said police generally do so. It lets you know that the perceptions of reality, the perceptions, how people interact in this world, they're just totally different. But the data actually gets a little more interesting because if you break it down by, obviously, you know where this is going. If you break it down by political affiliation and you break it down by religious affiliation, you can see some amazing disparities. On your screen now, the question is, do you think the recent killings of black men by police in Ferguson, Missouri, New York City, and Baltimore are isolated incidents, or are they a part of a broader problem of how police treat black Americans? This is a part of the same survey. All Americans, 39% believe that the recent killings were isolated. 65% of Republicans believed that these were isolated events, and they don't paint a picture of a broader problem, systemic pattern in America. 38% of independents believe that this was, I'm sorry, my screen is, I can't see it on my side. Hang on. Oh, so, okay, there it is. It's back. 38% of independent voters believe that this was isolated. 30% of Democrats believe that these events were isolated. Okay. Now, I'm going to hammer the Republicans in a second. Give me a second. 30% of Democrats, these are people who are benefiting from, 90% of the African-American vote. So you mean to tell me only 30% of Democrats believe that, not only, but 30% of the Democratic Party believes that these things that are so important to the African-American community are isolated events and don't speak to a broader problem. Now, I'm not going to draw a false equivalency because there's a huge difference between 68% and 30%, but 30% is not something to brag about. When 30% of your so-called allies don't believe what you have been telling them for the last 2 years, that's a problem. All right, so let's look back at the graph. So at the data, 65% rather of Republicans believe that it's isolated events. But let's break it down a little bit by religious affiliation. Police officers generally treat blacks and minorities the same as whites. All Americans, 41% believe that. White evangelical Protestants, 62% of white evangelical Protestants believe that police officers treat blacks and other minorities the same as whites. 40% for Catholics, 47% for white mainline Protestant, 29% for unaffiliated, and 20% for minority Protestant. 62% of evangelicals, man. White evangelical conservative Republicans think that everything is fine in America. At least 62%, and then 68% for the other, 65% for the other data. Like, they really have this absurd image of the police force in their head. Number one, they believe that the treatment of black people by police, this is a representation. No. And no matter how much, no matter what video they see, no matter how absurd the video, how clear the video is, they don't see it as a systemic problem. Neither do they see it as disparate treatment. They simply see it as the flip side of that is, if you don't think of it as a systemic problem, then what do you think the problem is? They clearly, I wish this was a question they asked in the survey. Like, if it's not systemic, then what do you think it is? And I guarantee you would hear stuff as black people are just complaining, or the race baiters, the race hustlers. This is what they think, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. And it's like, are we making any progress in America? Clearly, the answer is no. But it's amazing when you drill down and you really look and see the perceptions of white evangelical Republicans, conservatives, and how they look at the black experience. They are completely and intentionally oblivious to what's happening in minority communities. And it's a damn shame, because really, I mean, I guess you could talk about the story of Nat Turner, right? They have access to the same exact, their whole religion. They have the same exact book that tells them about justice and equity and how their God will deliver people from the injustice of the society around them. And so they have this. I mean, the people who read these same scriptures are literally telling us that no matter what video we see, no matter what evidence we see of what's happening to black people and minorities across the country, there's nothing wrong here. There's no injustice. The only problem is the people complaining. What do you do with that? I tell them to go to hell. That's what I do. Next story. All right. Let's talk about, speaking of video, let's talk about Eric Garner. So the video came out 2 years ago of Eric Garner screaming over 11 times, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." Of the officer, Daniel Pantaleo, using an illegal chokehold, ultimately leading to the death of Eric Garner. We saw the video, and despite all of the evidence in the video, a jury decided not to charge Pantaleo, however you pronounce this. They decided not to charge him with anything, and the Justice Department has just now, 2 years later, decided that they're going to put together a new team of federal investigators who will be taking over the civil rights case against the officer that killed Eric Garner. The new team will be based out of Washington, D.C., while the old team was based in New York City. So there was a team that was investigating, but I guess the writings on the wall indicated that they were not going to bring any type of civil rights violation charges against Officer Pantaleo. They ultimately were going to recommend that no charges would be brought. And so now the jurisdiction has been moved. It's no longer underneath the control of the team that was in New York City. It's underneath the team that is being headed out of Washington, D.C., making a clear statement that they believe that the investigators in New York City, in my opinion, right, the only changing factor in this is that it's a new team, not in New York City. So the subtext of this says that the problem was the team in New York City, and they believe that they're going to get a different result from the team in Washington, D.C. Now, that's problematic, right? That's problematic for a lot of reasons, because ostensibly we should be able to get justice from this damn Department of Justice, no matter where these investigators are based, right? That's number one. But number two, this is 2 years. This has been a long time. How long does it take? They could have investigated the entire damn department over the last 2 years and probably came out with the same exact data that we got out of Baltimore and that we got out of Ferguson. So sources say that New York based agents and prosecutors recommended no charges to be brought. A statement from Erica Garner. She said, "I believe the Justice Department has been dragging its feet, but it's now finally serious about pursuing justice and bringing charges." No, I was about to give you a quote from Al Sharpton, but I don't really care about Al Sharpton too much. Esau Garner stated they don't want to make these goddamn cops accountable. Sorry, I laugh in the wrong place. I'm sure this is very sincere from his heart, but this is just the way he's expressing it is exactly how so many of us feel, right? They don't want to make these goddamn cops accountable. If they would just put away one, not even all of them, just one, then the other ones would think about what they are doing before they do it. That's the thing about it, man. It's like, that's the most frustrating thing about this, is that in case after case after case, nobody is going to jail for killing unarmed people, no matter what the video evidence has shown. Now, there's some potential cases of the shooting of Walter Scott. That trial hasn't gone to trial. That case hasn't gone to trial. The shooting of my friend in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. That trial hasn't taken place, but they have arrested the man finally. Finally they arrested him. And so there's the potential for justice in some of these cases. But in terms of justice actually being realized, none. Not over the last how many years? So I'm with Esau on this. They don't want to make these cops accountable. If they would just put away one, not even all of them, just one, then the other cops would think about what they're doing before they do it. So I don't know what world, I know this was the last segment, but I don't know what world these 65% of Republicans, 65%, and I don't want to say the data wrong because I have it here. I'll just say it. I don't know what world 65% of Republicans live in, or what world 62% of white evangelical Protestants live in, but the experience of African Americans and minorities at the hands of police is entirely different than in white people. And no matter what videos, no matter what evidence, you still are going to have a percentage of Americans who don't believe that. You're still going to have a percentage of people who are supposed to be your allies who don't believe that. All right. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. Let's talk about something a little lighter, but probably equally as absurd. No, let me leave Colin Powell. So Colin Powell has come out and endorsed Hillary Clinton. No surprise here. I think anyone would expect that's exactly what he would do. He endorsed Obama twice, right? He endorsed him in 2008 and in 2012. It's curious to me how many people are really interested in his endorsement in the first place. Just curious, all things considered. We're not really interested in who Dick Cheney is endorsing. Granted, he's not Dick Cheney, but he sure was right there next to Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and George W. But despite him being complicit and a co-conspirator in getting us into Iraq, I like him. You know, he's an okay guy. You know, but anyway. So he said in September of 2015, I think this is interesting because, you know, his problem with the Republican Party, I understand. He said, I'm still a Republican because I believe in a strong defense. Because I believe in the entrepreneurial spirit that is so typical of the Republican Party in the past. But But he continued, I'm having difficulty with the party now. Well, you should. You really should. At this point, you should just change your damn affiliation. Just go ahead and say I'm an independent, no party affiliation. But specifically of Hillary Clinton, he said she is smart, she is capable, she was a good Secretary of State. She took his advice on email. No, that's not in there. She is balanced. She has the temperament, and no matter what anyone says, she has the stamina. I think she is fully qualified to serve as the president of the United States and will serve with distinction. Okay. Powell said of Donald Trump, I think it's more I think this is really about Donald Trump more than it is about Hillary Clinton, right? He's going to say these glowing things about Hillary Clinton because I guess he has to, he has to say it. He's endorsing her. So surely you have to have something good to say about Hillary. But when you hear him describe Donald Trump, this is really about him saying, F Donald Trump. So he said Donald Trump was unqualified. He insults Latinos, African Americans, women, fellow Republicans, American allies, and veterans. He has, and this is a quote, he has insulted America in one way almost every day. Paul called Trump a national disgrace, an international pariah, and noted his role in the birther movement, which Paul called racist. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to give any more commentary on that. Colin Powell has endorsed Hillary Clinton for president, and despite him being complicit and a co-conspirator in, I guess that's kind of the thing, you would want. I think if you can forgive him for the Iraq war, then you could totally be like, this is a great thing, man. Hillary Clinton is getting the endorsement of Colin Powell. Let me leave him alone. I don't really have that much animosity towards him. I don't think I have animosity towards him at all. I just think it's quite ironic that liberals are super excited about that endorsement. And I'm bullshitting. I'm not even being true to myself. I thought it was cool when he endorsed Obama. Screw the Republican Party. All right, it was cool. Whatever. Next on the news, I am a born asshole. I've been an asshole all my life, folks. It's just natural to me. Let's talk about some international news. So we have an argument going here, whether you pronounce this as CETA or CETA. I'm going with CETA just because, I don't know, PETA. Anyway, and feel free to cut that section out before you cut the segment. All right, here we go. In international news, CETA, European trade deal. It's an amazing story coming from Belgium, where something that's not directly analogous to the TPP, but similar to the conversations that we're having in the United States with regard to the TPP is actually playing out in a trade deal between Canada and the European Union. So there's a section, the southern portion of Belgium called Wallonia. It's a French-speaking region. It alone has blocked the trade deal between the entire European Union and Canada. And I want you to listen to the numbers involved here. All right, we'll get into the substance of it, but it's just fascinating that this small group of people, 3.6 million people in Wallonia, has blocked a trade deal that would involve 508 million people in the European Union. So CETA is a comprehensive, it actually stands for the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. Here's the problem, and here's why Belgium, and this one section of Belgium, is capable of holding it up. It requires the ratification of all 28 member states' national parliaments and 10 regional parliaments. And underneath Belgian rules, the national government cannot sign the deal unless all 5 local governments agree to it. Wallonia is the only region that resisted it, putting the entire deal in jeopardy. So you have the 27 member states who have already signed on to it. Belgium is the only one that has not. And out of the 5 regions, 4 of them have agreed to it. It's just Wallonia who has stopped it. So it's just fascinating that this deal has been predicated upon like a unanimous consent across all the nations, across all the divisions of the nation, all the regions of the nation. So the Parliament of Wallonia rejected the deal. It's a staunchly socialist region of about 3.6 million people, and that region, that's the contingent that has led the resistance. So it's their opinion. They believe that CETA and deals like it give too much power to multinationals, power even to intimidate, quote unquote, intimidate governments. Then this is where it draws some parallels with TPP, right? Specifically, they're talking to the tribunals and the ability of corporations to sue nation states because of policies, domestic policies that corporations feel hurt their bottom line. And so from this perspective, it is actually a brilliant and beautiful statement of the power of a small group of people. We're talking less than 1% of the European Union has the ability to stop the entire European Union from getting into a trade deal that they feel is detrimental to the environment, to workers' rights, to the sovereignty of their nations. So from that perspective, I think it's actually poetry in motion. So specifically, the terms of the deal, Canada and the European Union would eliminate 98% of tariffs. That's significant, right? 98% of their standing tariffs. They estimate that would increase trade by 20% and would, quote unquote, especially help small businesses. Everything is always sold as something that can help small businesses. Exporters would save 500 million euro in duties annually. However, the critics say that the deal threatens product standards and protects big businesses, allowing corporations to sue the government. So you can see the parallels already between CETA and the TPP. The deal is opposed by anti-globalization groups who say that it is a test model to push through even more controversial EU-US trade agreement. So this is sort of a prelude, or not even a prelude. It's kind of like the simultaneous storyline happening somewhere else at the same time, right? We're discussing the TPP and the problems of the TPP, specifically with the infringement on sovereignty, the tribunals being able to make judgments and receive compensation for any policies that they deem detrimental to their profits, right? This entire move, this globalized world that seems and feels and is all but inevitable. You have less than 1% of the European Union saying no. Some of it, now, to be fair, right, in terms of there's some stark differences, right? So we're talking about developed nations in general. So the biggest difference is, the protection of labor and competition. You're competing with Canada. You're competing with people who are going to work for, at a minimum $30,000 a year, right? You're not competing against people who can live on 5 cents a day. And that probably was extreme. I don't know, but I'm just giving you you get the picture, right? We're not competing with people who can live on incomes that we couldn't live on for a single day. So it's not apples to apples with the TPP, but conceptually the problems with it, right? The problems, particularly with the tribunal. I actually respect Wallonia's take on the tribunals. Their take on the tribunal is actually rather reasonable. And it's amazing that the entire deal is falling apart because of this is one of the reasons, right? They're asking for more transparency on the tribunals. They need more transparency on how the tribunals are set up and the people are selected to be on the tribunal. So if they gave transparency in that regard, that would alleviate one of the major problems they have with the deal. But it's amazing that transparency is one of the things that is blocking the deal from actually taking place. So the question is, how important is it for the people who have written the deal and the people who are signing the deal to not offer that level of transparency? Well, I'll let you guys ruminate over that and let you make the call. But I think it speaks volumes to the requirement to have 100% of the nations involved, of the European Union nations involved, and then Belgium itself to have 100% of their regions to sign on to it. I just can't imagine. To me, that seems like an impossible hurdle to overcome. And in the face of an impossible hurdle, they had everybody except for this one small portion of Belgium that says, no, this is not a deal that we want to sign on. So that's interesting. All right. So that's it, folks. You guys didn't call in tonight, which is totally fine. I will talk to you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.